Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 2120. And tonight we are talking about permission to feel what you feel. This is part 3 of our permission slip series for this week. That's the topic we're talking about, permission slips. So tonight we are talking about permission to feel what you feel. And I will tell you this one, this whole week with the permission thing, it became very real for me when Brad passed, and people were trying to tell me how I should be feeling and how I should be over this or over that. And so any person out there who loses a spouse, the first thing I tell them is if somebody tells you should be over it by now, slap them. I don't normally promote violence, but those people they are trying to be helpful, but they are not. So I say, if anybody comes up to you after a couple of weeks, couple of months, 6 months later, whatever it is, and says you should be over it by now, I said, you have my permission to slap them. But you don't need my permission to do it. It is completely your permission. So permission to feel what you feel. Feelings aren't wrong. They aren't too much. They aren't an inconvenience to manage. They're data, they're invitations, they're evidence you are still alive. Tonight we are giving ourselves one of the one thing so many of us were never taught to allow: permission to feel what we feel without judgment, apology, or delay. And when you're dealing with something like grief, giving yourself permission to allow yourselves to feel those feelings, that for me was a very hard thing to do. Even when I started with the caregivers group, when Brad first was diagnosed with cancer, and I was told I had permission to feel my feelings. And I really had no idea what that felt like. But there were times that I had to suppress my feelings and times that I just allowed them to flow. So why we learn to hide our feelings in childhood, the messaging is, you're too sensitive. I'm sorry, you're just a little too sensitive about this situation. You need to toughen up a little bit. Cultural norms are stay strong, don't cry, get over it. Yeah, no. Family systems that avoided conflict or discomfort, internalized guilt around anger, grief, or softness. What happens when we suppress? Resentment builds up under the surface. We lose access to clarity and calm. We mistake numbing for strength. Our inner compass gets cloudy because we're not listening. When you are numb in one emotion, you are numb to them all. And I remember when, after Brad passed, and I went on my very first cruise, and I'm standing there in this room in the middle of muster. Well, we hadn't even started muster drill. We were just assembling for the beginning of muster drill, the safety drill. And so I'm in this area, and there's a lot of people in this room, and everybody is standing in couples. We're on Celebrity Solstice, and we were in Vancouver, because we're heading out of Vancouver doing the 7-night Inside Passage, and we we're going to end in Seattle because it was the ship repositioning for the Alaska season. And I looked around, and there's just couples everywhere, and they're standing close together, arms around each other, holding hands, talking with each other, canoodling. And I'm just looking at all of this, and all of a sudden this wave of grief hit me so hard. It hit me so hard. All I wanted to do was just curl up on the floor and just cry, just let the grief pour out of me. I did not give myself permission to do that. I didn't know any of these people. I knew nobody on the ship. I knew 0 people on the ship. And this was one of my, and this is why it took me so long to go out by myself, so long to go and sit in a restaurant or something, because I never knew when grief was going to hit me. And so it took me a while to give myself permission to leave the house, to give myself permission to go grocery shopping, to give myself permission to go to a restaurant and have a meal. It was probably 4 months after Brad passed when I was out one day driving over to get groceries and stuff. And I'd taken the long way around because the end of our street was onto a major road, and to go left was next to impossible at times. And so I would go right, and I would go down across Pacific Coast Highway and then come back up another street. And to me, that was faster. I was moving. I didn't have to sit there and wait and risk crashing into some vehicles or something because I misjudged or anything like that. I could just take a right turn and I was okay. And so it took me past Denny's. And so next thing I knew, I'm pulling into the parking lot at Denny's. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. Their lunch roster is over. I go inside. The place is virtually empty. I am basic, and I find they seat me at this table, which is kind of in a corner, which was fine with me. I like corners. I can put my back against the wall, which I like doing. And I sat there and read a book while I was waiting for my meal and stuff. And I did it. That was the first time I went out for a meal by myself. And I got outside, and I was just so grateful that I had found the strength somewhere to do that. I had given myself permission to go out for a meal. But when I'm sitting on a cruise ship and I'm in a room with 100 or so people and all these couples standing around me, and it's suddenly this wave just comes over me, I purposely suppressed the emotions. I would not give myself permission to feel. But I will tell you this, that was the longest 40 minutes of my life. And people go, Jules, not 40 minutes. I said, we hadn't even begun when I discovered this. I still had to wait for them to get ready to get going. And then we had the 20-minute thing. And, I said, this was right at the beginning, and I had to wait for them to start. I said, I don't even remember the drill. I just know that when it was over and we were released, I just made a beeline for the door, and this wave of people just parted in front of me. And I get out into the foyer, and I was on deck 7 and I had to go to deck 10. And I was ready to pump up those stairs. But as I walked out into the foyer area, the elevator doors opened right in front of me, and it was an empty elevator. I was in there. I hit 10. Everybody else came in. We get to 10. I had to get out of the back corner to get to the front and get down to my room before. And once that door closed, I gave myself permission to allow those feelings to come. And it was very cleansing. What permission to feel actually looks like, it's saying, I'm not okay without a 5-point solution. If you're not okay, you're not okay. You don't have to justify it. You're just not okay. Letting tears rise without rushing them away. So everything I'm saying here right now is making space for grief, anger, joy, and confusion, naming what's real, not just what's appropriate. All of these things under what permission to feel actually looks like. I suppressed all of those until I got into my cabin. As soon as I got in the cabin, I was free to say, I'm not okay. I let the tears come. I made the space for the grief, the anger that came through. I was naming what was real in my emotions, not just what was appropriate. I was just justifying it to myself at that time. And why this legacy works? Emotionally honest people create emotionally safe legacies. The next generation learns by watching us feel and keep going. Empathy starts with our willingness to feel for ourselves. And I'll tell you this, there's a lot of times that I was also like, I'd go grocery shopping and I go through the aisles first and then I go around the outside. That way I get the frozens and the fresh stuff last. So it's the least amount of time. So there were a few times when I was in the middle of the aisles, doing the aisle thing, collecting my whatevers from the aisles, when I would feel the grief come over me and I would just walk out of the store. I would just leave the shopping cart where it was and I would just walk out the store, go to my car, and I would just sit there and allow myself to let those feelings loose. Afterwards, I would either go back into the store or I would just say, screw this, I'm going home. It was okay. I was not okay and I knew it, and I just didn't want to have breakdowns in front of strangers. I wouldn't allow myself to do that. I would not give my permission. My permission was to keep the grief private. People did not need to know that I was in the middle of grieving. And because there are some people out there who think that after a certain amount of time, you should be over that. You should be past that. And it's like, either you haven't experienced this type of a loss, or you are emotionally numb, or you think other things. And the worst thing you can say to somebody who's in grief is, get over it. And yeah, I tell somebody if I tell new widows, I say to them, I said, if anybody ever tells you to get over it, I said, you have my permission to slap them, but you don't really need my permission. It's just up to you whether or not you want to slap them stupid or not. But anyway, that's my feeling on that. So your reflection questions are, what feelings have I been trying to downplay or avoid? Where in my body do I feel my truth, even if I haven't named it yet? What would it look like to allow myself to feel fully today? I will tell you, we're 7.5 years out since Brad passed. I still get, when I'm out in public, there will be something that may trigger the grief. It could be a song that I hear. It could be a smell. It could be a phrase that something said. It could even be somebody who's about the same size as Brad, and I see them from behind and I think it's Brad, and I get all excited, and I have to remember that no, it's not Brad. So there's just the little things that will trigger you. They still pop up, and those times I don't leave the shopping cart in the middle of the supermarket anymore and just walk out and go to the car. No, I push through it. I acknowledge that the grief is there. I acknowledge that it's making me, that I'm not okay. I acknowledge that we can work through this okay and come out the other side okay. I give myself permission to feel. Do I cry during that time? There are times where I will have the tears will water up, but they won't let them fall. So there are times that I let the tears rise, but I don't rush them away. Some of them I will actually reach up and just wipe them away, but but I acknowledge. What I do is I give myself permission to acknowledge the feelings that are coming through. Sometimes that is just all I need to do is just to acknowledge those feelings are there. To acknowledge and to be grateful. I also put gratitude in there, to be grateful for the fact that I can feel these feelings and I can name them. And I'm also grateful for the time that Brad and I had together, for all the years that we got to be together as a couple, and just the fun and stuff that we had as well. So something will trigger it, and then I now know not how to handle it. I guess it's a way of handling it, but it's giving myself permission to feel, to tell myself I'm not okay, to let the tears come. Sometimes they don't fall, occasionally they do. Just to make that space. And sometimes it's just standing there in an aisle in a supermarket, just off to the side, so I'm out of everybody's way, and just having a moment to allow those feelings to come through and name them, so that I can be honest with myself that I have experienced those feelings. Anybody follow that? Okay. All right. So your reflection feelings that you can put into our journal, which scan the QR code up here. It will take you right to where you can get a copy of this. It's just 46 pages. You've got the thought to reflect on, and you've got the porch notes. Porch notes are where you would write some of these questions. And you don't have to do them in order. You can go through this and go, oh, this one says, think of a moment you felt deeply understood. What made it so meaningful? And you might decide, I don't like that question. I'm going to find another question. What do you want to carry forward from this week, and what can you let go of? I think I'll answer that question. So you don't have to do them in order. You can just flip-flop backwards and forwards between the thought to reflect on, which are always on the left-hand pages. The right-hand pages are your free writing pages. And you can even just finish there and continue over here if you want to. You don't have to just put everything into this one space. But I like my lanterns. I will tell you this. I love opening this journal and seeing those little lanterns in the corner. And then on the back, we've got our little published by thingy here with the little lantern as well. I love that lantern. So in closing, your feelings aren't a flaw. They're a form of intelligence. Let them speak, then let them move. Sorry, getting tongue-tied. Your feelings aren't a flaw. They're a form of intelligence. Let them speak, then let them move through. And you can keep going on with your day. And with that, we are out of here. Go out and have a super fantastic, sparkling evening and allow yourself permission to feel, to acknowledge emotions as they hit you. Sometimes you do have to remove yourself from a situation to go to a space where you feel safe. You may be in an area where you don't feel safe expressing your emotions at the time. Go to a safe space so you can experience those emotions. With that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konara.